How's it going, guys? Persona Cheese here, and today we'll be talking about boss fights. There are a ton of bosses in Persona 4 Golden, many of which are tough to beat and some of which are optional ones you can miss, like the Reaper. But in this video, we'll be going over the hardest boss in Persona 4 Golden, as well as where to find them and how to beat them. So, who is the hardest boss in the game? Well, my answer is definitely Margaret. Obviously, this is all subjective, and you may think bosses like the Reaper or Izanami are harder. So, here's why Margaret's the hardest boss in the game. First off, she has a time limit which you won't know about unless you look it up, and if the time runs out, you're dead unless you have one of a few specific things to help you. Second, Margaret's ability to swap personas means there's no attack you can consistently use on her except Almighty, which isn't very strong. And third, her wide variety of attacks makes being immune to as many affinities as possible super important. All of these things are unique to Margaret, and that makes her, in my opinion, harder to beat than the Reaper or Izanami. Now that that's settled, I'll show you how to find and defeat her. First, let's talk about the requirements, because there are quite a few. You have to be on New Game Plus, you must have gotten the true ending by beating the Yomatsu Hirasaka dungeon on the playthrough your current New Game Plus playthrough stems from. You have to beat all optional bosses at the top floor of the dungeons from Yukiko's castle to heaven before February 1st. You have to max Margaret's social link before March 20th, and finally, you have to obtain the Orb of Sight, which happens on March 20th if you're going for the true ending. As for what you have to do, after obtaining the Orb of Sight, you have to go back to the Velvet Room before talking to the gas station attendant. When you do, Margaret should be alone in the Velvet Room and will invite you to fight her. Once that conversation is done, talk to the gas station attendant and let the scene play out. Next, before you continue, make sure you buy any gear or healing items you might need. After that, head to the TV world, and if you need to, go to the Velvet Room to make sure your personas are up to snuff. Once you're ready, head to the Heaven dungeon. Margaret will be waiting for you at the top floor. In order to prepare for this fight, you need to be extremely powerful in terms of both your party's personas and levels. If you don't have everyone at level 90 at least, don't bother trying this fight as she will wipe the floor with you. That being said, even if you have everyone at level 99, chances are the fight still won't be easy for you. Whoever you're bringing to this fight should at least have their second awakenings, preferably their third, not only for the new moves, but for their enhanced resistances as well. If you can, maxing out Risei's social link and getting her third awakening are immensely helpful. Not only are the buffs she gives handy, but knowing Margaret's affinities without having to test them each time she switches makes the fight infinitely easier. If you can be bothered, I highly recommend fighting the Reaper until everyone you want to bring to the fight has golden robes, the best armor in the game. Due to a certain attack she uses periodically, it's advised to have an accessory or skill on your main character that revives them after death, because if you don't, you'll probably die when she uses said attack. For the record, even if you guard and have max endurance when she uses this attack, you'll still die unless you dodge or have one of those accessories or skills to save you. As for who to bring, I wouldn't recommend Chie for a few reasons. One, Chie has poor magic and good physical skills, but doesn't have nearly as much strength as Kanji, so no matter what skills you use, she doesn't deal nearly enough damage. She does have a great buff skill, Dragon Hustle, if you got a third awakening, but the SP cost isn't worth it in my opinion. Some might consider it better than taking 1 or 2 more turns to buff up, but this is counteracted to some degree by the fact that you'll need to use SP items pretty often after using the skill. Kanji is a great choice. His attack buff, tankiness, and resistance to physical if you have his third awakening are extremely helpful, specifically when it comes to a certain physical move Margaret uses. Kyosuke doesn't have as much raw damage as some other party members, but he's a good all-rounder, with decent wind damage, physical attacks, and buffs. Yukiko and Teddy are both excellent choices for the high magic damage, break skills, and in Teddy's case, support skills. On top of that, having at least Yukiko or Teddy as a healer is crucial unless you have an ungodly amount of healing items. SP items are also very important regardless of who you bring, because considering how long this fight is, you're highly likely to run out of SP at least once before the fight ends. As for the boss itself, it's worth noting that in Golden, Margaret has 2 turns by default, so be sure to remember that throughout the fight. Once you start the fight, get to work with your buffs and debuffs as soon as possible, and once that's done, start using Mind Charge and Power Charge on whoever you can to deal some damage. What buffs you use are up to you, but I recommend only increasing 2 of your party's stats each time so you can get some damage in. At first, her moves mainly consist of high damage elemental moves, usually targeted towards one party member in an attempt to strike their weakness, as well as Hasu Otobi, Megadolion, and Mind Charge and Power Charge to strengthen some of her attacks. Once she reaches 50% health, she'll fully heal herself, but luckily this is the only time she heals. Once she reaches 30% health, she starts using Power Charge and Hasu Otobi much more frequently, so try to have a persona that can't be hit by physical equipped as much as possible once you reach this point. On her 50th turn, she uses a Megadolion that deals 9,999 damage, and ends the fight instantly unless Yu has a skill or accessory that revives him or Risei revives him, so make sure you have one or beat her before that happens. Unfortunately, once you beat her, the only thing you get in-game is a spiral bookmark, which does nothing except prove that you defeated her. But apart from that and the satisfaction you get, you'll also get an achievement for it, so if you're going for all achievements, you'll need to do this. And if you want to find a secret boss weapon for Yukiko, then check out this video too.